Well, near 21 years in a country that allows freedom and opportunity for all races and sexes to achieve any dream they set out for themselves, one would expect women in corporate South Africa to be better represented in top and senior management roles. But the latest statistics reveal that women are still struggling to climb to the very top of the corporate ladder. Last week, the Businesswomen's Association of South Africa, together with Sasol Women in Leadership, launched their annual census, the only one of its kind in the country. Now, this report measures the inclusion of women in South African business. And joining us this morning from our Durban studio is the president of Businesswomen's Association of South Africa, Farzanah Mall. A very good morning to you, Farzanah.
Good morning.
And then I've got in studio with me in Johannesburg, University of Johannesburg researcher Anita Bosch. Good morning, Anita. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
I want to start with you, Farzanah, down in Durban. Just quickly tell us about the most concerning findings for you within the census.
From a global perspective, women make up more than 50% of the workforce. In South Africa, we make up more than 50% of the population. 45% of women in South Africa are employed. But if you look at the number of women in leadership positions in JSE-listed companies and your top 20 state-owned enterprises, at an executive management level, this diminishes to approximately 29%. If you look at a director level, this is about 21%. And if you look at the top echelons of leadership, your CEO positions and your chairman positions, women make up only 2.4% of CEO positions and just over 9% of chairman positions. If you look at the total directorships held in South Africa, and it's just over 4,000 directorships, there are just around 935 women directors, and of the 935 women directors, 500 women are holding this position. Now, if you look at it from a global context perspective, a number of countries legislate a minimum number of women in board positions. While South Africa outperforms the BRIC countries, we're still behind some of the developed world. And with women making up more than 50% of our population and 45% of our workforce, if we do not retain our top talent, we will struggle to remain competitive in a changing and rapidly changing business world with increased uncertainty and competition.
Anita, yeah.
And if you look at it from a state...
I just wanted to bring in Anita Farzanah. I'll come back to you now. I wanted to talk about the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I see that less than 10% of listed companies have a 25% showing of women directors in the businesses. Is that really a concerning matter for you?
Yes, it definitely is, because those companies have dropped. So in previous years, there were more companies amongst the 25%ers. And so that shows a backward, trend, a decline. And so for us, this becomes an important marker because we want to reach a tipping point. More companies should be having more than 25% representation. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of a no-brainer. And measuring on the JSE, looking specifically at the large market capital companies, those ones have the worst representation. So of the large industrials and companies that have a huge economic say in the country, we have very low women representation there.
That is very concerning, Farzanah. What do you think are the reasons behind this? Well, why are women being prevented from going to the very top in corporate South Africa?
There's two factors that really contribute to gender inclusivity, transformation and diversity and in top leadership positions. The first is legislation or quota systems which support diversity. The second more key factor really is buy-in from the leadership in large listed companies in South Africa and the large organizations within the country in understanding that women make up more than 80% of consumers of products and services globally today. And if we do not have diverse thinking in the boardroom and we do not capitalize on our top talent, we will struggle to actually achieve our bottom line performance targets. We're seeing more and more companies re-look at their gender inclusivity strategies and realize the importance of the contribution of women in leadership positions. And we are seeing them put mechanisms in place, training and development programs, and relook at their human resource practices to encourage more women to contribute in leadership positions.
Anita, I want to come to, you know, the bread and butter issues. People always go back and say, yeah, but it's difficult for women to achieve those kinds of roles because some of them have to be mothers at home and so forth. Is there still that kind of archaic thinking?
Well, there is, and it's really a social norm, isn't it? So what we're saying, in effect, is that men cannot be carers by making that statement, which I think is not true at all. But also, secondly, that women cannot do the work that that's done in industry if they show caring, which in itself is also not correct.
Yeah.
So I don't think caring is exclusive to running a large company. And in fact, those CEOs that show an amount of caring are most probably the better CEOs for industry. Being a mother and having children does not necessarily exclude you from performing any of those roles, but you do need different types of support mechanisms, and that organizations must realize.
I've been trying to get my wife to, because my wife works in the corporate world, and I've been trying to sell her the idea of the house husband, but she sends me to work every day. I wanted to ask you, Farzanah, on a serious note there, is there a danger of us losing our top female talent to multinationals and elsewhere abroad because of the way we manage our corporate structures here in South Africa?
Definitely. If you look at what the World Economic Forum Gender Parity Report 2014 said, is that we would have to wait 81 years for gender parity in the workplace, and that if companies wish to be competitive in the 21st century, they really need to relook at utilizing women in leadership positions. So the demand for women leaders globally has increased, with Japan being the latest country to legislate a minimum woman on board positions. It becomes a key challenge to ensure that we are retaining our top talent, that we create work environments that are conducive and support them in their training and development, and understand the critical success factors for women to perform in leadership roles. There are certain sectors that are more progressive than others. And if you look at the 53 companies with no women directors, generally the trend is that the leadership of those companies say that they struggle with retention of women, or to find women that are keen to progress in those particular industries. I don't believe it's a challenge. I believe it's re-looking at workplace practices and re-looking at what would it take to retain women so that you're having the diverse thinking in the boardroom, or we are at risk of losing our top talent.
Farzanah, thank you for joining us from our studio in Durban. That's Farzanah Mall, who's the president of Businesswomen's Association of South Africa. Before I let you go, just tell me quickly, are our young women coming into the workplace being mentored enough?
I think mentorship certainly is an issue that can get more attention. But what we're finding is that in a lot of the professions, there are more women now entering the workplace than men. And so, in essence, when women start with their childbearing phase, very often they exit. But we're finding the trend in South Africa is that South African women are actually coming back into the workplace. Yeah. And there is a lot of bias involved in career moves then, because it's assumed that a woman is then not as focused, not as committed, and therefore cannot move up that ladder as fast as a man that did not have that period of exit, which in itself is an area that companies need to pay attention to, and there are various strategies to use for that as well. Well,
Anita Bosch, who's a researcher at University of Johannesburg, thank you very much for joining us today to talk about women in the workplace, women in the corporate workplace. My wife is one of those, and it always seems as if women have to work twice as hard, try twice as hard to make an impression, and the numbers don't show. Thank you for joining us once again. That's where we wrap it. Newsroom broadcast live from a studio in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, with the show, of course, available on demand on our YouTube channel later. Just type in Newsroom and the date in YouTube, and it pops up. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it. In the morning.